Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and I am super excited to be here with you today. And I mean it today. I'm just really loving this recording today. This is actually the third recording I'm doing today, which if you're on YouTube, you'll recognize that I'm wearing the same clothes as the other two episodes that I did. The two other episodes I recorded, though, however, are for the not the Showing Up to Life podcast and YouTube channel, but for the sort of sub channel that I've created, which is called Mindfulness at Work Casual Fridays. Every Friday, my intention is to record, or if it's previously recorded, to post a video that's a little shorter than the one that you and I are used to doing together in the Showing Up to Life podcast. These are going to be around 15 minutes or so. I actually think the first one was 15 minutes. The second two have been like 16, 17 minutes. So you know me, I'm going to try my best. But the Showing Up to Life, the Casual Fridays podcast and YouTube channel is really geared for applying this work to our work, right? You know, I imagine that most of you have a job. I imagine that some of you maybe are self-employed. Some of you might be entrepreneurish of some sort. Maybe you own a small business. Maybe you're just a freelancer. Whatever the case may be, in any circumstance, whether you're an employee, an entrepreneur, a business owner, a freelancer, any of it, mindfulness practices can help us so much in what we do in work. Okay, so I've dedicated this special once a week podcast to that stuff, right? The how we can apply mindfulness practices to our work. All right. So I hope you're enjoying that. And actually today I did a second video today because I realized that in the introduction episode from last Friday, I didn't really introduce myself very well, I don't think. Now, I very rarely take the time to go back and watch the stuff that I've done. It feels weird to me to do that somehow, but I'm pretty sure I didn't really tell my own story. I told the story of what the podcast is going to be, right, and how all that stuff is going to work, but I didn't really tell my story. So today I did that, and I hope you all are enjoying it. I really do. And please, if you enjoy it, or maybe if you don't enjoy it, but you think somebody else might enjoy it, please share it around, okay? Please let people know what's going on, especially with that Casual Fridays one, right? I know that, the Showing Up to Life podcast it seems like it might be an acquired taste, if you will, and I love all of you for listening. I really do. I look at the numbers. I see, on Spotify, it tells me they're, where in the world, a lot, not individuals. I don't know who is where or what their names are or anything, or what your names are or anything, but I know that like some of you are like there. I think there's one person in Israel and one person in Germany, and there's a couple of people in Brazil. I am so excited about this. A lot of people in Australia. So hey, y'all down under, I'm so happy you're hearing me. This is so awesome. So I just want you to know that I see this, and I really appreciate all of you for listening. Okay, but again, the Casual Fridays is a little bit more of a specific, focused sort of audience that we're going for, right? Which is, now it's not that focused because everybody has a job, or everybody, has some means of making income, or else they're trying to find some means of making income because it's what the world runs on, right? And so it's not focused in the sense of a focused set of interests, but it's a focused topic, right? It's really going to be driving home, the ways in which we can bring this mindfulness practice into our day-by-day workplace. And that's going to be very heavily emphasizing the practices themselves, and specifically informal practices, right? Because when we're working, that's unless you work for one of these places that has I think at Amazon now they have these like chill out pods that I don't know what they call them, but like a little pod, like a little closet you can lock yourself into. And there's some plans and some meditation music. Hey, that's great. If your workplace provides that for you, I am so supportive of that. I love that so much. However, most of us don't have that, right? For most of us, time is money, right? So you don't have the luxury of unplugging for 15 minutes and doing a meditation. And so therefore, I'm in this podcast of Casual Fridays podcast, the other podcast, I'm going to be giving you practices that you can use moment by moment in your work. You don't have to stop what you're doing to do these practices. All right. So that's really what the emphasis is going to be on that podcast. But here we are in the good old Showing Up to Life podcast that's been here for, I don't know, like 4 years now. We've been doing this. Today is the 680 second episode that I'm recording, and that's only the ones that I counted. I often tell you all that I think I recorded probably about 100 episodes before I even started counting them. And so we're going to creep up to 1,000 episodes pretty soon, which is so exciting. Anyway, let's talk about a very typical or very common but commonly perhaps misunderstood concept within the world of mindfulness, right? And what I'm talking about is something called the monkey mind. Now, maybe you've heard that term before. Probably you have. A lot of people, again, in the world of mindfulness, it's a very a common descriptor for what happens in our minds a lot of times. Now, when I was growing up, or not growing up, but as I was, entering into this world of mindfulness and understanding what it was all about, and kind of learning the vernacular and the sort of concepts behind it, right? Which is part of mindfulness, right? The mindfulness happens, or we absorb and we sort of integrate mindfulness into our own lives in two specific ways, right? One way is through learning, like the concepts and the vernacular and the terminology that I just was mentioning. But then there's the practice, right? And these are two separate things, and both are very, very important. However, if you only have time for one, the practice is the one you want, okay? Because that's, remember, mindfulness is a skill, right? And you can only develop a skill through doing the thing over and over, right? Just like I always say, like you can't learn to ride a bike from reading a book about riding a bike, right? You can read a book could be 1,000 pages long. It could tell you everything there is to know about a bicycle and how to ride it. But the first time you get on the bike, you're still going to be wobbly and oh my gosh, what's going on here? Because you must experience the riding of the bike in order to develop the skill of riding the bike, okay? Mindfulness is no different from that, okay? However, again, it is not correct also to say that the information and the concepts are unimportant. They are not unimportant. They are very important because they describe the way in which, we go from sort of point A to point B, right? Like when we're, stressed and not aware and judging everything and experiencing what we call the monkey mind, which I'm going to define in just a second, that's point A. That's not mindful, right? And when we practice mindfulness, we go from that state to a state of non-judging awareness, stress reduction, regulation, and a more focused mind, right, than the monkey mind allows, okay? Now, again, both of these are important because most of us grew up, at least if you grew up like I did, without any of these concepts around you, right? Like nobody ever told me about anything about non-judging awareness until I was, in my 40s, right? And so the same thing might be true for you. So in that case, it is very valuable to understand what we're talking about when we mean non-judging awareness and why that's important. What's the opposite of non-judging awareness, right? And all that kind of stuff. Now, all these books are certainly helpful, right? But I'm here to help you too, okay? So maybe I can save you some time on all the books. However, if you're looking for recommendations on books, hit me up. I have lots of them, okay? And I can really, if you tell me specifically what's sort of, resonating with you, I can steer you in the direction of some amazing books that will certainly help you to conceptualize this work as you're also practicing it. Hopefully. Okay. So let's talk about the monkey mind. So as I said a minute ago, before I completely derailed my train of thought, which is very, very appropriate for what we're talking about. When I first heard the concept of monkey mind, right? What I pictured, or what landed on me as I thought about that, or kind of, entertained that notion, was the sort of, loudness that can happen in our minds sometimes, or specifically in my mind, I guess is what I'm really saying, right? Which is sometimes like a feeling of mental chatter. Maybe it's like, it just feels like, like a howling that's happening with all the stress and all the pressure that's going on. Sometimes we feel as though that mental chatter is like dialed up to 11, as our friends in Spinal Tap might say, right? And that certainly is something, right? And that is certainly part of perhaps what we might call the monkey mind, right? But when I learned what the monkey mind really was, it made a lot more sense. And it was much easier for me to apply that understanding to my own moment by moment experience of my internal, dialogue and chatter and really my attention. Okay. As we talk about a lot, as I talked about in the last podcast just the other day, the work of mindfulness, the skillful of mindfulness, is really, in three what we might call domains. Okay, three specific skills that we're cultivating that produce the impact of the beautiful, healthy, and wonderful impacts of mindfulness, right? So these three skills, as I talked about the other day, are focused attention, open awareness, and kind intention, kindness, right? Just to be, having a universal positive regard, having a love for the present moment, basically, right? And I know that might sound a little complicated. Like, how could I love like getting pulled over and getting a speeding ticket, for instance, right? And it's not about loving every bit of your experience. When we say kind intention, it's about just bringing a sense of lovability, if you will, or just a loving awareness of what is going on. And in that case, in the case of getting pulled over and getting a speeding ticket, that love would turn into a self-compassion. It would turn into a feeling of, gosh, this is hard for you. You're feeling nervous. You're feeling stressed. You're worried about the money, about the ticket, about all this stuff. It gives us a moment to dwell with that, with a love for ourselves, okay? So anyway, the reason I repeat those three skills is because that first one, the focused attention, right? That's really what we're talking about when we talk about the monkey mind, okay? Or the lack of the focused attention is really what the monkey mind is. So the way the way it was finally described to me in a beautiful book, by the way, I can add that to your list. The book is called, I think it was called the Miracle of Awareness, or the Magic of Awareness. And it's beautiful. It's written by a Buddhist monk who's pretty obscure, not a very famous guy, but really wrote a really beautiful book, and I love it. So I would love to pass along the name of the book and the author to you, and I'll look it up, and I'll do that. Certainly I can email it to you, or I'll put it in my next episode. I didn't think I was going to mention it today. But however, the author of this book is named Anam Thubten. I think that's how you say his last name. Thubten, I believe it is. Again, I will look it up. I'll give you the name. I'll put it in the description. But the way he described monkey mind was really, it just like snapped into understanding for me so quickly. And again, it really made a difference. It really like, oh, that's what it is kind of moment, right? Which was like, not that it contradicted necessarily what I thought, but this is much more specific and much more applicable, pardon me. So anyway, the way Anam describes the monkey mind, he says, imagine that you're standing in front of a big house and it's at night, right? And this big house, maybe there's like 12 or 14 different windows that you can see in the front of this house, right? And in each, there's no curtains on any of the windows, right? And the light is on in every single one of them. as you're standing here just looking at this house, right? Now imagine you're standing there. I guess it doesn't have to be that many windows. It could even be just 4 windows. I don't know why I made it so big. I think maybe because my monkey mind is that big. but as you're standing there looking at this house that's got all the lights on, and it's all dark outside, so you can really see, what's going on inside these windows, right? And as you're standing there, all of a sudden a monkey pops up into one of the windows, right? And he just sits there for a couple of seconds, and then he disappears. And then he pops up in another window, just immediately, just boop, there he is. And then he stays there for a couple of seconds and disappears. And then poop, pops up in a different window. And he just keeps bouncing from one of these windows to another, to another, to another, to another, to another. We might call this the whack-a-mole mind, right? And so that is, so for me, I actually describe this now, whack-a-mole is a great one, but I also like, I don't know if any of you who are my age and in the America area, you might remember a cartoon from when you were a little kid named Ricochet Rabbit. Right. And Ricochet Rabbit was this little, he was like a sheriff, right? And he could, he would go and like his superpower was just being able to like bounce all over the place and he would bounce across a whole room, like off of every wall, every ceiling, every floor. And he would just dumbfound his, the bad guys and he would disarm them. And, and everyone's like, how did that happen so fast? Right. So that's the way that monkey mind works, right? It is the way that our mind bounces from one thing to another, to another, to another, to another, and with such rapidity and such, just efficiency, the way that this happens. And the thing about the monkey mind, right, is that it's not unnatural. It's not something that is necessarily bad, right? Because as I said in the last episode, it's the nature of the mind to wander. That's how it is. I mean, that's how it's supposed to be, right? And this nature of the mind to wander is part of what we call our survival instinct, right? Your mind, your brain, your physiological brain is in a constant state of prediction and association. Right? So it's scanning everything that's happening. And by the way, there is so much data that is coming through your senses every single moment of every single day, like billions of bits of information is coming in. And your brain and your mind is processing all of it. I mean, most of it's filtering out because it knows that it's not important, right? Like grass, right? Every time you see grass, you don't have to think about what grass is, right? You've seen grass millions of times. Your brain quickly, puts that into a box of that's safe, it's not important, it's just background noise kind of thing, right? But the point is that your brain is constantly, scanning and working on all of this stuff. And that is only accounting for the stuff that's coming from the outside in. We have a whole other universe of thoughts and emotions and physical sensations that are just promoted completely by self, by just internally. And so every moment of every day, of every last shred of nanosecond of your life, your brain and your nervous system have been sort of experiencing all of this and associating it, right? So it's associating, okay, is that thought scary? Is that bad? Is that, is that something that's dangerous for me? Or is that safe and like grass or like a table or something I don't really have to worry about, right? And then it's taking all these associations, and when it associates something like a loud noise is something dangerous, for instance, right? Like the sound of a screeching tire, for instance, right? That associates with something dangerous. And so once your mind and your nervous system and your brain make that association, it creates a response to that because it's now predicting that something dangerous is about to happen. That sound means that I'm in trouble. Okay? And so that's the way your brain and your mind is working, again, every single nanosecond of your entire lifespan. So does that sound like an instrument that is going to hold some rigid attention to something? Of course not. Of course not. And that's why when we practice, focused attention, and we develop the skill of focused attention, right? It's never, ever, ever about saying, okay, my attention is here and it's never leaving. Because that would be completely antithetical to the way your brain and your mind and your nervous system works. And that's it. You don't want to work against that, okay? Because there's been 200,000 years of evolution on top of millions of years before that. 200,000 years just modern humans, right? that has come to this, that has built this system for you. So you're not going to undo that. I promise you're not going to undo 200,000 years of evolution. Not in your whole lifetime. You're not going to do it, okay? So the idea then is, how do I work with this understanding, right? Or not this understanding, but how do I work with this tendency of my mind and my brain and my nervous system? Okay? As Jon Kabat-Zinn says, we can't stop the waves, right? Which is to say, and that's now on a more external level, right? That we can't stop things from happening in our lives. Some things are scary, some things are inconvenient, some things are painful, some things are scary again, But also some things are joyous, some things are extraordinarily pleasurable, some things are euphoric even in their pleasure. And it's all happening all the time, and it's all coming at us in ways that we cannot control. And so the beautiful thing is that you don't need to control it, because as Jon Kabat-Zinn, continues in that quote, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf, right? And so the idea is that we're not going to, now that's the external experiences that he's talking about, right? Is to paraphrase an old bumper sticker, right? Stuff happens. I'm keeping it clean here, right? But the idea is that stuff is always happening externally, but then also stuff is happening internally. And the degree to which this ricochet rabbit monkey mind is happening, and the degree to which we're bouncing from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, is going to be determined by not only the external experience, but also the way that we process internally, right? And so when we are not practiced in doing that, right? And when we're not practiced in our attention training, then the mind just bounces all over the place all day, all the time. And there's nothing to restrain it. And in fact, it's something that becomes a habit, because it's something we've been practicing over and over and over and over and over again. And as we perceive those external experiences to be scary and stressors and negative and bad, as we judge them as bad, that only increases the rapidity and the chaotic nature of that monkey mind, or as we're calling it, the ricochet rabbit mind, right? I mean, I hope that makes sense to you. And if it doesn't, please, please, please ask me some questions about this, because this is one of the most important things that you could ever learn. Seriously, no matter what you're doing, whether you're applying it to work, you're applying it to your love life, to your social relationships, to your just to your hobbies and your passions, any of it. This is the most important thing, because where our attention goes, our energy flows. And that's why as you practice mindfulness, and you practice both the focused attention and the open awareness, and you start seeing that monkey mind and that ricochet rabbit nature of the mind, what you start to put together is that on those days where the monkey mind is particularly chaotic and bouncing around all over the place, those are the days where I'm feeling very exhausted and very depleted, because distraction exhausts me. But focus rejuvenates me. Focus energizes me. So on those days where the monkey mind is less so, perhaps, or even for a period of time during a day, perhaps when you're involved with a project that you really love, right? Or you're doing something you really love to do, you get into that flow state where the background of life just seems to fade away, and now you're right here with what you're doing, and you feel like there's nothing that could stop you. Right? Those are the days when you get done with something like that, it's like, oh, I feel like I could do anything. I feel like I have all the energy in the world. Even if my body's tired, I feel like energized. That's the difference between the distraction of the monkey mind and the focus of the focused mind. And again, it doesn't mean that anything outside has to change. And it doesn't even mean that anything internally changes either. We're just not paying attention to it so much. Those thoughts are still happening. They're just happening in the background and not bothering us, not taking away our attention. Because remember, it's about your attention. It's not about what happens to be going on. It's about where you're placing your attention. Are you attending to that, all the stuff that the monkey's trying to tell you, or are you attending to what it is that's happening right now? Right in front of you, right? Which could be as simple as brushing your teeth or tying your shoes or walking across the office to the washroom or to the kitchen, right? It doesn't have to be something that's really special that's going on in order for us to pay attention to it. And this is how we practice our focused attention. Now, here's the really important thing, and I think I mentioned this the other day in the last episode, but it's worth repeating. Really, this is worth repeating. As we practice and as we develop the skill of focused attention, right, what we're also developing and also cultivating is the skill of something we call meta-awareness. Not meta in the sense of, of loving kindness, but, not M-E-T-T-A, but M-E-T-A, right? Which is basically awareness of awareness, which is understanding or which is noticing and recognizing when my mind is not focused on this, when the monkey is bouncing around all over the place, and when I find that I am paying attention to the monkey instead of paying attention to what is happening in front of me. And the beautiful thing is that once you train yourself to do this, the monkey starts paying attention to what you got going on because he's more curious about what you're doing than what's going on in all these different rooms in this house, right? I mean, I hope you understand that. I shouldn't say right, but I have a tendency to say that. Right? It's almost like my kind of thing. And it's something I'm trying to bring awareness to, because that's the thing. It's not that I need to stop doing that. Or the solution to that is not to somehow rigidly try to keep myself from saying that word, but it's more about bringing the awareness to when I'm saying it and how I'm saying it, what's causing me to say it. And I didn't just say it right there, right? Because that would have been, I just said it there. That would have been the time to say that, right? But see, bringing awareness to it allows me to recognize it. And the monkey mind is no different from that. Okay, so it's not ever a thing where we want to tie the monkey up and stick him in a closet so he doesn't, bounce around our minds all day, because doing that is to work against the nature of your mind and to work against the nature of your specific your physical brain. And that is never a good idea. That is never the path to anything except suffering. Because really what that is it's a sense of aversion, or a form of aversion. As I'm skipping that word over and over here. I'm feeling very happy about this. When we deny that, when we try to push something away, when we try to not allow something that is there, from being there, then we're experiencing aversion, and aversion is going to result in tension in the body. It's going to result in negative emotions, and it's going to result in that monkey mind getting even more and more chaotic, and it's going to influence the thoughts that are pessimistic and negative and critical, not critical in the sense of critical thinking, but like criticizing ourselves or criticizing others. It's going to be very judgment based, very judgmental. And these are all aspects that are going to bring unwellness to our body, our emotions, and our mental state. So the moral of the story here, right, is not to look at the monkey as something that's bad, right, but to look at the monkey as something that's trying to tell us something. And as we recognize that the monkey's really bouncing around, that most likely means that we're experiencing stress, or we're experiencing something that's overwhelming us on some level. And this could be, again, something completely internal. We might just be sitting there driving our car, right down the road. Do, 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 do. And the monkey is raging inside of us because we're worried about something. And that means that we're probably not really paying attention to driving our car. We're paying attention to something that has nothing to do with right now. And therefore, and the trick about this, or the real harsh reality about this, is that as we're experiencing that, right, as the monkey gets more and more chaotic and more like jumpy and all over the place, right, that impacts the way that we perceive the thing that we're thinking about. So if we're thinking about this meeting that's going on, the more that sort of tension arises within that aversion and the judgment and everything, the more pessimistic, the more scary, the more catastrophized we believe that meeting's going to be, which is not true. It's not a reality. It's the reality that we're creating. So by understanding the monkey mind and seeing the monkey mind, holding the monkey mind within our open awareness, and at the same time training ourselves to focus on something, that's when we start to understand ourselves more deeply. And that understanding is what leads to healing and growth and well-being, and ultimately to happiness, or as we like to say in the mindfulness community, I guess we'd say, the conditions for happiness. Because we're not going to be happy every moment of every day, just like we're not going to be rigidly attentive to everything every moment of every day, right? There's the word again. We're going to, but the conditions for happiness are in the ability to manage all of it, to not feel aversive to it, to accepting that this is what it is, that my monkey mind is all over the place today, and then asking why, instead of judging it, being curious about it, saying, what is it about today that's got my mind going? And it's a very quick checklist. Like, okay, how much sleep did I get last night? How much caffeine am I drinking today? How much food have I had? How much exercise have I had? What am I dwelling on? And it's as simple as that. And then we say, oh, that's what it is. I just got to eat something. I got to drink a glass of water. I got to take a little walk. I got to, splash some water on my face, something like that. It's usually that simple. All right, everybody. I think we've come to our time here. Yes, 32 minutes. My gosh. This is getting used to this different format is really tricky. But anyway, I so appreciate you listening today. I so appreciate your attention that you give to me. And I appreciate just the fact that you allow me to do this every day. So thank you. Thank you very, very much. And I will be back soon. I have a couple more cancellations tomorrow, so I might record a couple more episodes. We'll see how it goes, okay? All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this, and I wish you well. I'll be back soon. Take care.